All right. So I believe that if we're already live, then we should probably start discussing some things. It seems very relevant. Uh, I hope that people are gonna make it there to see our chat. I have some questions prepared. So first of all, like we're really sorry for this super long trying to figure everything out. My name is Maria Corolla. I'm Chief Marketing Officer of Guarda Wallet, and I'm incompetent in live streams. But right now we are ultimately live, and I'm here with Bob from Ethereum Classic Cooperative, and it's amazing to have you here. The thing is that we have been working with Ethereum Classic for a very long time. So basically from the beginning of Guarda. And for us, it's amazing when we can just link with the community and just do something together and be awesome together. And so having you here is a great experience for us, and having just all these questions, just making everything work even in this like kind of crazy weird manner. Can you actually see the chat on the new video?
Let me pull that window up, and I'll see if I can like mute that tab or something. Let's see.
Because I believe that if people are going to that video, then we should probably open another troll box, right?
Yes, yeah. Is there not one on this video
Yeah,
instance?
it's a different one, and I'm trying to open it at the moment. Live chat. Oh, I can open it on my phone, but there's well, there are some people in here. Um, okay, trying to figure everything out again. So complicated.
Yeah. So I see that there. Yeah. So if I'm just going to flip over here so I can type into that window as well.
Okay, sure.
Right.
So you have the
I'm just
chat.
gonna tweet out an updated link as well, and maybe you should as well.
Oh, so everybody is here. Okay, I can see everything. Yeah, my colleagues are gonna drop a link
Okay.
to the new live stream. So I believe that we can
So go
start
ahead.
in this case. First of all, I would love to just have some general information about yourself and how did you start working with cryptocurrencies and Ethereum Classic in particular, and just have a little bit of a backstory in here.
Absolutely. Um, so my background, most of my professional career has been as a software engineer. I worked in the games industry for the majority of my career, for 18 years actually. I worked for EA for more than 15 years, most of that at EA Sports. Worked on 6 FIFAs, NBA, NHL, um, Fight Night, um, central technology teams like worldwide initiatives, architecture. That's the top of the tree I got to there is I was once the software architect for the whole of EA Sports. So all titles, all platforms, all everything, all of EA Sports, everything. Um, I left EA in 2014. Really like kind of like looking for um, something a bit more about me. You know, I guess like many other people, you work for large corporations in your early 20s. It's all very exciting. You know, everything's new, and you get to learn things and so on. But over time, you kind of realise that they kind of act like they own you.
Oh
It's
wait,
quite
yeah,
a
that
dynamic that where you're sort of selling your soul a little bit for working for a large corporation, that you're trading off your personal freedom for whatever, for money, um, you know, fun projects or whatever. But so, like just a simple example there, we couldn't really work on open source projects. So for um, 18 years, I didn't really get to do any open source work.
Oh,
Like I was
okay.
really interested, but I didn't get to actually participate in any open source projects. Um, so that wasn't great. Um, I wanted to start doing some sort of things like little fun projects on my own as well, not allowed as well. So I ended up leaving EA in 2014. I was really getting into mobile games, and then wearables as well, like smartwatches.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Those are cool, definitely.
so I mean, maybe in 2014, like smartwatches looked like they were going to be a bit more important than they have actually ended up being. Not really taken off so much. But yeah, so I went and joined a little mobile games company in Vancouver that also gave me the freedom to do things on my own on the side. So I was doing stuff with Tizen. So Tizen is a mobile Linux that Samsung were really looking to launch at that point. Like you got all these mobile Linux phones appearing, like Ubuntu Touch and Firefox OS, and then Tizen and Sailfish as well. Um, Especially around 2013, it really looked like there might be space for like a third OS in there as well as Android and iOS that would actually be like a Linux. It would actually be a proper open platform. So I did work on that. Um, that never really worked out in terms of mobiles, but it did work out actually in terms of smartwatches. So
Yeah.
this here is a Gear. That's like a Gear Sport Active or something like that.
All right.
All of the Samsung Gear devices run Tizen. They run a mobile Linux.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I have no idea
so it was
about smartwatches like whatsoever.
no,
So like,
no. So it's kind of Linux on your wrist. Um, I met a guy in 2014 though who just randomly met a guy in a pub and started talking, and he said, if you ever like heard of Bitcoin, have you ever really looked into Bitcoin? And I was like, well, I've kind of heard of it, but not really. It's kind of interesting. I've been reading a lot about like gold and silver and precious metals and sovereign debt and so on. And I was aware of Bitcoin, sort of, some people seeing it sort of in that area, but it wasn't really very interesting to me in itself. It's just money. Okay, it's money and it's a different form of money, but like that's not very interesting in itself. What really is interesting to me with blockchain is other things. Well, what else can you do? So the conversation we had was like this mind-blowing, like 3 hour long. Well, you could do this, and then what if like you had like robot warehouses with like self-driving cars, and the cars could like do interactions with each other, and you could have like ships and like shipping and like you could have a thing that tracked all the things in the ship, and then a robot could move them and they could trade with each other,
oh
and
wow.
you could have people delivering things, and basically what if you could like rewire like the whole world, like all of commerce and all of like individuals and everything, so that individuals could just like do peer-to-peer interactions with each other. What if you could have this completely like voluntary world of both humans and these autonomous organizations and sort of Internet of Things devices all sort of talking to each other, and like everything's a free market, and imagine like what you could do if you had that kind of like grease underneath everything. And so it took me along to a place called Decontrol, which is like this sort of co-working community space in Vancouver. It's quite iconic, where they had all the meetups. And they were talking then about sort of Bitcoin 2.0. It's like, well, what's the next thing going to be? You've still got whatever side chains, and Ripple was around at that time, but not evil Ripple, but the good earlier Ripple.
Yeah.
And you've got sort of like side chains and pegging, and then an Ethereum. The white paper had just come out like 2 or 3 months before. So it's kind of like, well, there's this idea, this Ethereum idea, but like it's just like an idea. Like nothing's really happened yet, but it's kind of exciting. And so at that time, it was just kind of interesting to me, but I was more focused on doing this mobile and wearable stuff because it was actually like a job that I could get paid for. But in July of that year, Vitalik actually spent a day in Vancouver with my friend David, who, like me, is a dude in his 40s who's actually got a bit of life experience. So they were just sort of so July, they just created the foundation, but the crowd sale hadn't started yet. So it was kind of like Vitalik, asking somebody with some life experience, well, what do you think about what we should do, and basically like running ideas off him, because David had been around in Bitcoin for years and years before that. So I guess in the same way as like in Toronto, you had like Anthony Diorio and Decentrol and like Jeff Coleman and others that had kind of like been Bitcoiners doing stuff together that were like, oh, right, this Ethereum project, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like people looking at Mastercoin and colored coins and just really thinking, well, what's the next step? So I got to meet Vitalik in 2014, and it was like, wow, this guy's like, a genius, but I don't know if it's going to work. And is it just a toy? Really, because in an era where you're moving to giant data centers, you don't, nobody like has their own hardware for running a business. It's like you've got vast cloud, millions of VMs in, gigantic scale, and running websites or whatever, this massive scalability. And what you've really got with Ethereum is, okay, so it's like a single threaded computer for the whole world. It's like a 1980s era PC, like an old IBM PC that runs at like 4 hertz or whatever, for the whole world. Like, like no parallel anything, just utterly sequential. And you're thinking, so like, you're not going to get any throughput. You're not going to be able to do anything very interesting. Like, it's kind of cool that you can, run these Turing complete things like everywhere and nowhere. Like, that's awesome. But so I was saying to Vitalik, so so how, like, what have you got any ideas about scaling? Like, how is that going to work? And he's like, well, you've got some ideas with sharding and then still brewing them up. But I went on with my life. But the following year, in 2015, I was working in Toronto for TD Securities. That's like a bank. I basically like got my first at 40, got my first ever like real job in quotes. Where I was wearing a suit and tie and going to an office sort of thing. In the games, like when I got a job in the games industry, it's like people were like, is that like a real job? Can you get paid for that? Like, is that a real thing?
No, but what year was it? Oh, okay, so this was
1996 I started, so it was a long time ago, and it was really a sort of like very early industry there. But anyway, I was working in Toronto, and I took the opportunity to go to all the meetups there, and it was like orders of magnitude more people in Toronto than Vancouver, because it's a big financial center. I mean, maybe a lot of people don't know, but Toronto, I mean, it's like as big as New York or something like that. It's like or London. It's like a really big city.
Yeah, I've never been, but like I'm pretty sure that people.
It's a big financial center. Really major city. So what you'd see there is like meetups with hundreds of people. Like in a big like university kind of setting. It's not like 10, 15 guys like in a room smoking weed or whatever. It's
oh, like, but the early cryptocurrency meetups kind of look like several guys in the room, and it's just
they did, and that's what it was like in Vancouver. It's just like a bunch of dudes in a basement, like sort of dreaming. Really, like there's no reality to any of it. Where a year later, you're like, wow, we're in this thing at the university. There's people from major companies here. This is like kind of serious.
oh yeah, definitely. There's a different vibe.
And what was the, I mean, the other thing that had happened is just in that year, it's like, wow, they'd gone and done it. Like shit, you know, the mainnet was launching, so it was Frontier, and it's like Jesus, like they've like done it. Like this is a real thing, and really at that point, I came to the conclusion I can't not get involved. You know, I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have to get involved. You know, I kind of drew the analogy in my mind that it would be sort of like if you managed to meet Linus Torvalds just as he was starting Linux, and he's like, right, you know, I'm just doing this thing. You know, it's just for fun. You know, you know C++. You've done C++ program. Oh yeah, I've done C++. You know, could you help? You know, would that have been like a fun thing to do? You know, could that help your career? You know, would that be an enjoyable thing to do? And or like, you know, you meet Tim Berners-Lee, and he's like, yeah, I'm just about to launch the web, so we're going to be doing like a meeting thing down here. Do you want to come and see me launch the web? I'm just going to like press the button. Do you want to see it? You know, you can't. It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So what I started doing at that point was really just sort of volunteering my time and effort in, firstly, actually with my smartwatch stuff. I wanted to see, could I get an Ethereum node running on a smartwatch? That was my pet project, was seeing could I like port the C++ code base to ARM Linux.
Did you actually get somewhere with that? I've never heard of that.
No, well, I did get the node running on various like Raspberry Pis, like Ubuntu phone, this, that, and the other. I didn't actually get it running on this specific device. And also, the other thing at that point was you hadn't really got Light Client.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
it was like you're running a full node on like a tiny device. So, I think I had some quite utopian ideas there about what might be possible in terms of like, you know, running nodes. And it's like, you know, you need things an incredible lot lighter than they are right now. I mean, even running an Ethereum light client, an LES node, like beyond the fact that that's got a leaching problem, so that you're never going to get good LES coverage, because why would the full nodes just allow, you know, millions of light clients on every device in the world to just leech off them with no comeback? It's just too heavy anyway. You know, just the size of the state trees and everything. It's like,
yeah, that's a pretty obvious thing. So like you cannot, even though the idea actually like running a full node in the smartwatch, it's pretty fun when you think about it. Yeah.
It is, and anyway, that ended up turning into me getting hired by the Ethereum Foundation.
Oh, so you started with the Ethereum Foundation. Yeah.
Well, that was my first like paid role after I'd been volunteering for a few months.
Oh, okay.
Because what happened there in 2015 is the foundation actually nearly ran out of money. You know, they'd been running for about a year, like spending a lot, and the ether price was still like nowhere. And they got down to only having like 4 months worth of money left. And this was like, you know, like nothing had been done. It was like, this project is just going to die like before it goes anywhere. So that's when Ming Chan came in, and they ended up sort of deciding, right, we're going to defund Swarm, we're going to defund Whisper. The C++ team are going to go out, so that, you know, that became parity. And, you know, we're really going to like pare down the spending. They shut down, you know, a number of different operations, and like they've got this house in Zug because they thought, you know, they were going to have like loads of people working in Zug,
Yeah.
in Switzerland. But then like nobody did, so they've got this big house that they were paying for, and like nobody was in it. So they sorted all that out. But what happened at that time is with the C++ team going out, like the code base that I was working on, there was basically like hardly anyone really supporting it. So I just got in contact with Vitalik and Gav and Stefan and Christoph Jentz, and was saying, well, hey, you know, like maybe I can help. So I ended up really just sort of volunteering my time in, like joining their like stand-up meetings every week, and just like trying to see what I could do to help. And at that point, I was the only person in the world that did that. Like no companies, no other people, nobody helped apart from me. So then the following January or February, the ether price turned up from like 50 cents to $4 or something.
Yeah.
You know, something tiny. But it's like, ooh, look, we've got like a year and a bit now. We can like hire again. You know, so guess who's like first in line? You know, nice Bob, who was the only person who helped. So where I'd been kind of hoping, well, if I volunteer a bit, you know, maybe I'll be able to get some job at some startup. You know, maybe somebody will like hire, you know, a little part time. You know, maybe I can find some kind of like role somewhere. And it's like, no, you know, into the inner sanctum. Here you go. You're hired by the foundation. It's like,
Well, yeah, definitely. So actually, we should probably kind of go to Ethereum Classic Cooperative already,
yeah,
because like this all are fantastic goddamn stories. This is really really great. But we got some questions in here that are definitely
well, tell you what,
waiting.
let me fast forward through on Classic then.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. This is
I ended up, so I worked at the foundation for about 8 months. Then I left to join Consensus and to go and help set up the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which I worked on for a year.
oh yeah. Okay.
I worked for a couple of other projects, Sweetbridge and then Quant Fury after that. And then I was, in 2018, I met Anthony Lusardi at EdCon, where he was giving like the first ever Ethereum Classic talk at an Ethereum conference
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
Virtual had set up. And Anthony ended up inviting me to go and speak at the Classic conference in Seoul last September, so I went along to that. I've been doing a lot of this sort of call for end to tribalism stuff in Ethereum, just sort of saying, you know, so many different factions, and it's just so self-defeating. You know, both. I mean, even on the ETH side, you know, like people on the foundation sort of thinking, oh, Consensus is just, you know, out for money, or fuck parity. You know, those parity guys. You know, like, so even on the Ethereum side, you've got these, let alone Ethereum to Ethereum Classic. So I went and spoke there. That went really well. And the co-op were looking for an executive director in January. And Barry Silbert, who I'd met there, was just like, oh, you know, like what Bob was talking about and how we'd got on. It's just like, maybe you'd be a really good guy for that. Would you consider it? And it's like, yes, and I did, and I have, and here I am.
Well, that's really great. So, Ethereum Classic Cooperative is a non-profit, right?
Yeah,
And
it's actually a public charity.
oh,
Believe
okay,
it or
so
not.
it's public charity. Okay, like there's
So
there's a
yeah,
question
we
about
are a
the.
charity, and if you are a US person, you can donate to it, and it's tax deductible.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
we're actually a charity.
okay, sure. But you get the investments from Grayscale, right? At least as
Well, it's not
far as I.
investment; it's donations.
It's donations.
It's
Yeah,
no
that's
strings
right.
attached donations.
But there is a question from Ethereum Classic Vietnam to you, Bob, saying, will ETC Cooperative become fully independent of Grayscale from 2020? Why and what are the pros and the cons of it? Thank you.
Yes. So, I mean, to explain how the cooperative works. So the cooperative, it was created by Grayscale. You know, Grayscale sort of initiated this. And the setup there really, I mean, the deal with Grayscale is Grayscale run funds. So they've got a Bitcoin fund, an Ethereum fund, an Ethereum Classic fund, and a few more. I mean, I think basically the Bitcoin fund there is like massively bigger than anything else. It's, you know, like 95% of what they've got, something like that. But you know, Barry Silbert, you know, very famously was a supporter of Classic from the very start. So what happened with Grayscale is that they basically decided that they should support the ecosystem. And you know, it's in a very kind of aligned incentives kind of way. Is, well, if you are a fund holder in the Ethereum Classic fund, you want the price of your ETC to go up. Well, what is a good way to get the price to go up? Well, how about spending a little bit of it on building the platform? You know, that's a very simple thing to do. So that fund has 3% fees, and so 1% of those go to the foundation. Sorry, to the co-op foundation. So basically, the cooperative is getting a third of the fees out of
Yeah.
that fund. And that was a 3-year commitment that they made in 2017 that expires in
2020, great.
in April of 2020. Now, they've been the primary funder, but there have been other funders as well. So DFG, the parent company of ETC Labs, made a donation as well in 2018. I think the figures, the overall figures are something like Grayscale has contributed at 1.3 million in total now. DFG has contributed $250,000. And then the other thing that happened was that the Ethereum Foundation actually donated some ETC that they'd like found in old wallets or whatever, like last November. So that was worth 140,000 at the time. It's 15,000 ETC. It's only worth like 60,000 now with the price gone down. But you have those 3 different sources of funding. Now, what this independent stuff means is that Grayscale basically created the company, created the ETC cooperative. Then there was a process where we applied to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, the taxation service in the US, to apply for, non-profit status.
Yeah.
So that got approved last year. But there's just operational things which Grayscale still helps with, like basically running the bookkeeping. They've got the bank account. They've helped out with like legal advice and things. Now, my mandate when I started was firstly to look for additional funding sources so that we're break even on the money. Because at the moment we've basically got a big pile of money because ETC was worth so much in those through those peak years of 2017, 2018 that we like build up some reserves pretty quick. But then we've basically been spending it quicker than it's coming in at the moment while the prices are depressed.
Yeah.
So I need to find new sources of funding, with the primary obvious one being like ETC Labs, but maybe the foundation as well, or maybe anyone really. Anyone can donate. Please give us the money. So that's one thing. But the other thing is really just like getting the thing independent. So doing our own accounting, doing our own everything, so that really you've got the cooperative should be completely freestanding.
Yeah.
And have multiple donors. So that there can be no kind of like accusation of, well, look, you're just part of Barry Silbert's empire. You're just doing his things. Which really was never the intention. Always the cooperative was meant to be a coordinating kind of function, and primarily with the summit. That's the primary thing that we've got is organising the summit each year. But then through the year doing everything that we can to help with community communications, coordination on roadmap, and anything that we can do to help.
Yeah, like the pros of the cooperative being independent are pretty clear, but do you think there's going to be some problems in the process of getting independent? There's going to be some troubles, or?
Well, I think the only kind of con there is really is kind of, well, when you're sort of like joined in with a larger group like that, they've got lots and lots of resources and lots of ability to like help you out.
Yeah,
Whereas
obviously.
if you're freestanding, you've got to like know how everything works, and you have to do everything yourself. So, for example, I'm having to learn. Okay, we've got to do these tax filings. Well, how does that work? Like, what do we even need to say, and what do I need to get together, or things like a bank account is apparently, so we've just had. Grayscale have basically had an extra bank account, and they're a really massive commercial entity, so they can easily get banking. Well, now we're like this tiny little non-profit, kind of crypto related. It's like, well, which banks are we going to go to, and are they even going to deal with us? That. So it's going to be little things like that are going well.
Yeah, they're pretty annoying, but you just have to deal with them.
It's just problems that you've got to work through, and I mean it's fine. We'll work through them, but it's just, I mean, I guess it's like growing up, right? It's like it's time for ETC
Yeah, like
to leave.
you just have to do everything by yourself now. Well,
That's
this
it.
is
It's time for us to leave home, and it's like, right, you don't know how to cook. Well, you better learn how to cook. You don't know how to like do a budget. Well, you've got to learn to do that. Like, so that's kind of it.
yeah.
So
So this makes
that's what we're
perfect
going through at the
sense.
moment.
So I hope that this answered the question of Ethereum Classic Vietnam, and we can move to some other ones that we already got from Simon, for example, who says, "Hi there. What is your own opinion about implementation SHA-3 as algo mining for ETC?"
So I mean, we had a really great mining panel at the summit. So different talks from Bitmain about sort of building trust in mining, from Lindsay talking about their ASIC, and from Alex talking about SA3, SHA-3, and then also you had Henry Kwon on that panel, who used to work at AMD, ATI, and had got like deep experience of sort of GPU stuff. So I mean, I guess what I've learned over the last few months is, firstly, like, not to be afraid of ASICs. I think when I was in Ethereum land, it's like, well, ASIC resistance and
Yeah, there's
Bitmain and
a
all
lot
this,
about it.
like that. That story did resonate with me. But I've come to see that it's an oversimplistic view. I'd actually met the Lindsay people at Summit last year, and the really interesting thing there was that they had got this sort of background in mobile Linux stuff as well. So there was this amazing project called the OpenMoko phone that was done. Oh, when was it? I don't know, sort of like 2002, something like that. That was this effort to make like an open hardware, open software phone.
Oh,
Like, so a phone that was completely like top to bottom open, published schematics and everything, that everyone could be able to make it. So there are multiple people who work at Lindsay who worked on that project. And so what they're really about is, like, they're about open hardware. So what they were saying was that, ASICs and hardware aren't like evil. It's business processes that are, business models which are the problem. It's like hidden mining, and it's like controlling supply and all of this. But the hardware itself is not any kind of problem. I mean, it's just running the same code but faster. Like, literally, that's all it is. So yeah, I really kind of came to understand, well, there's nothing to be afraid of with ASICs, and actually, like, resisting them is futile as well. So I mean, what that really means is like, I think where Ethash might have made kind of sense in the time that was happening there, where you really did have quite an immature kind of setup with, basically Bitmain dominating everything. I think it maybe kind of made sense to have some resistance at that point, but I think it doesn't really make sense anymore. So then the question is, well, do you change or not? So I think the SHA-3 proposal, as Alex puts it forward, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think that that's a good idea. Where I'm unsure, though, is, so if you're doing that, like, are you kind of picking winners? Everyone who's made their investments in Ethash mining, either with GPUs or with ASICs, like, is that like being the Fed, making that decision? Because you really are sort of, whenever you make a change of hash for a project, you really are, you're having pickers, and you're picking winners and losers. It's really quite a centralizing, nasty kind of thing. So, and I mean, I guess really Alex's point is, well, you kind of want to get there. It's like the wrong decision was made. So maybe you do, like, go through the pain of going, okay, well, we're going to, like, get rid of Ethash. We're not going to resist anymore. Resistance was wrong. So let's undo that. I guess it's got some characteristics that are a little bit analogous to what happened with the monetary policy on ETC. It is saying, well, look, the lack of monetary policy or the lack of kind of good policy or whatever was kind of problematic. So maybe you kind of you do kind of like go against the immutability a little bit of saying, okay, well, look, what we're going to do is we're going to make a change, but the reason that we're making that change is because when we make it, we want it to stick like forever or for a very, very long time, so that you have got that like economic and planning certainty that lets companies, projects go, yeah, this is a good foundation that I can build stuff on, right? They're not going to fuck about with things and, break my stuff and, so I think it's got a lot of characteristics like that. What you'll hear from Lindsay and others is sort of like, well, Fhash, it's not ideal, but it's okay as well. And it's probably like worse to change it now than just to keep going. That the various people are worried about DAG sizes and
yeah, this is actually the second question that Simon asked about it, about the DAG file growth, and for some miners now it's impossible to mine with 4 GB cards, right. So that we are moving on to that too.
The question is, well, is it, do we need to do something about that? And if you have a look in the ECIPs, there's one that's speaking about that, which I'm going to go and find, which is sort of like something that is up for discussion in this next hard fork is, well, do we need to do something about DAGs? Like, is that DAG size a problem? Do we need to make a change to like whatever, reset that, make it smaller? Do we need to do something about DAGs? Or
is there some kind of a decision on that already, or is it still kind of in discussion?
It's still in discussion. And what is it? Is it 1037? No. 1047? No. Anyway.
We can drop a link afterwards to everybody who is interested too, including Simon.
There's an IP that's talking about that and saying, do we need to do something about DAGs or not? And again, I think it's not entirely clear there. So I guess the options are don't change anything, and the DAG's growing, and I guess you have to get bigger, better hardware to be able to run it or whatever, or do something about the DAGs. But does that have nasty consequences in itself as well? Or just screw Fhash entirely and go to SHA-3. And I mean, something interesting to note there is with Lindsay, building this Fhash ASIC. The other thing that they've repeatedly said is, that they're not looking to say, well, look, we've invested all of this in this Fhash, so we're going to like stick with Fhash till the death. That they've said from the start that all of the proposals about SHA-3, that they have been done in the right kind of way, and it's a good discussion to have, and whatever the ecosystem decides, would be okay with them. If we went to SHA-3, well, they would make SHA-3 ASICs. Even with ProgPow, they're like, well, if ProgPow happened, we'd make a ProgPow ASIC. Even though ProgPow is supposedly like to make it ASIC resistant, they're like, no, that doesn't even work. Any of this resistance is only sort of like slowing things down. Like, it's kind of, resistance is futile ultimately.
Well, yeah, that's fair in many cases, I think.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of my own preference or whatever, I don't. To be honest, I don't know. That's not my area of specialism. I'm not. I'm not a miner. I'm not a cryptographer. I think if you were starting a new project today, SHA-3 would be perfect.
Yeah.
But that transition, that's a judgment call that's hard to say.
When it comes to DAG file growth, then we're going to see in the next fork how it's going to be, basically. So there are like, actually speaking in terms of the fork, there's lots of discussions going on right now, I guess, in the cooperative too. Is there anything else that is as concerning as the DAG file growth?
As a, oh, this is a thing that we have to solve.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes, gas limit is the other thing. So, I mean, really, the situation that we're in is with Atlantis, we caught up to Byzantium. So we're massive jump up in terms of where we are relative to the F protocol. Now, Ethereum are going through the final stages of the Istanbul update.
Yeah.
So what we're looking to do now is, either we're going to have two hard forks. We'll do like a Constantinople and Istanbul, or the other thing that I'm kind of advocating for is, well, maybe we do the two of them in one, or maybe what we do is we actually have two release lines at the same time, and it's like one of them is only the Constantinople ones, and one of them is both, and we kind of like test both of them, like as in get all the code ready. And then you're doing the actual ECIP's human consensus like gathering in parallel. As in, I think we can kind of like jump the code there like now and do testing for months while we sit here like arguing about what's going to be in and out. And what we can have, I think, is we can end up sort of fast following on Istanbul. So when Ethereum get to Istanbul, like we can be at Istanbul soon after that, like a month or two after. I think we can have caught up. But the thing is, we're not going to have only caught up. We're actually going to go past them because we're going to end up doing some things that they haven't done yet, like a versioning of the EVM proposal.
Yeah.
That's one thing. A second one is like looking at subroutines and probably static jumps. So basically like little EVM improvements that have been like waiting for 2 years kind of got stalled, that sort of stuff. And I think that we're going to be in a situation where within a few short months, ETC is actually going to be objectively better than F as a protocol. Like obviously not as an ecosystem and number of dApps or anything yet, but basically like that bottom layer, like we've caught up and got better, that it can be really, really competitive. And actually, I say objectively better because cheaper on gas costs. It hasn't got all of the bloat because none of the ICOs happened on ETC.
Well, yeah, that's hard to deny. Yeah.
On ETC, so you haven't got all of that massive bloat. You haven't got that, whatever month-long sync time kind of thing. The other thing is, you haven't got the irregular, transaction, the irregular state transition of the DAO. The other thing that you have is, well, you don't have to do all of the scaling at L1 now because state channels work. So as in what we can do on ETC is say, well, look, we're actually going to like lock in the gas limit probably quite low now. So that's another thing that we have is saying, well, look, we don't want the L1 to bloat up massively so you can't sync the chain. Like that obviously hasn't worked out for ETH, has it? So let's not do that for ETC. Let's lock that in before you get a slew of users coming in. Because I think there's a real decent chance of a whole bunch of Ethereum developers going, oh, ETC is actually like good now. Oh, and it would actually be cheaper to deploy on that. And even if you don't care about the philosophy, it can just be a better deployment choice. Because with the protocols being aligned, like deploying to ETC would be no harder than deploying to like a testnet. It's like, do you want to go to Ethereum mainnet, to Goerli, or to ETC? Like it's like literally, it will just work. Same tools, everything, like just identical. So at that point, just rational actors are going to like look at ETC and say, well, look, that's actually like cheaper. So let's do that. So what we can say is actually like lock in the gas limit like low now, So how low is to be determined, and exactly how to do the lock is to be determined. Do we just want to do a BTC style like block size kind of approach of just saying, look, we're just going to lock it in the protocol. It's just going to be a consensus thing of saying, look, we're going to hard code the gas limit. Miners aren't going to vote on it anymore. We're just going to lock it. Or maybe what we want to do is like a user activated soft fork thing. So have, the users like have this counterbalance against the miners. Because at the moment, the dynamic of the miners voting on the gas limit is actually really, really destructive. There's no counterbalance to that. Of course, the miners want to vote the gas limit up, because they're going to get more money. So do they vote it up to infinity? Like they would, probably. Like that's what the game theory would say would be sensible. But the problem with that gas limit going up, as you've seen on ETH, is it just makes the thing completely unsustainable. The fact is that the tech stack, as it exists today, it can't scale anymore at L1. It just cannot. So what you need to do is, well, stop scaling it then. And this is exactly what's happened on BTC. Is saying, well, look, yeah, it would be lovely if we had if we could scale it more. But the fact is, it's going to make the thing unsustainable, make things, that you can't sync a node anymore. That's going to affect decentralization. That's going to affect censorship resistance. And that undermines the whole premise of the platform. So what the hell is the point?
Yeah, like everybody's talking about scalability a lot, but the more you do it, the more it kind of destabilizes the whole thing.
Right. But the thing, I think, which has always been different between Ethereum and Bitcoin is like that really on Bitcoin, it's been like Lightning is the hope. Like, throw everything on Lightning. Lightning is going to solve everything. But like no other options. It's like, well, what if Lightning doesn't work? And it's like, there's no answer really. So, but what you've had on Ethereum is, well, look, you've side chains, or state channels, or plasma, or now like all these fancy kind of like ZK rollups, or there's lots and lots of different options that there have been on Ethereum, and then you've also had with sharding for F2. Now, obviously, you're not going to get sharding on ETC, but maybe that's fine, right? Maybe if you do have this small kind of L1 that's basically like where we are now, and say, okay, and if you want to scale, well, use state channels. They work. Here's 4 or 8, 4 different implementations of them. Or Plasma, like I don't think Plasma kind of works yet. Or, other like Loom or like POA chains, or, there's lots and lots of ways of doing it. But the answer is like, just don't do it L1, okay? Just stop, right? That didn't work. It obviously didn't work. So what we're going to do on ETC is we're not going to do that. So I think what you can have is this real situation where in a few months' time, people on the Ethereum side are just like flabbergasted to find, oh, so like ETC, like it isn't like some joke kind of like protest shitcoin with no devs. Oh, fuck, it's like actually better than F1. Whoa, like that's a mind-blowing thing. And I mean, beyond those technical infrastructure pieces, the other thing is that there's funding. That's the other thing that's changed in ETC over the last year and a half, is that you've had ETC Labs come to the table, and James Woe there, of DFG, the parent company. I mean, he's basically like Joe Lubin for ETC. It's like it's 2015 was on Ethereum, right? Where Joe Lubin's like, hey, you've got a project, great, here, I'll fund it. Come and join Consensus. Consensus basically like gathering all of the developers, doing infrastructure projects, dApps, like just doing everything. Like, and that's the dynamic that we now have on ETC, is that we have, an equivalent. We have a Chinese Joe Lubin for ETC. And so the reality is, if you've got interesting kind of projects that are going to benefit the platform, that they're probably going to get funded in a way that hasn't happened on Ethereum. really F1 has basically been defunded since about 2017. If you're doing stuff on F2, yeah, you're probably going to get funding. But if you're saying, hey, can I make some incremental improvements to the EVM? Can I do something on, on parity? No. Well, you can, but you're not going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And similarly, you see, like that with parity as well. The parity's effectively got kind of like really, really de-resourced for the last 2 years, so that like warp sync isn't working, and it's like it's not going to get fixed. It's kind of like these F1 platforms have kind of been sort of rotting away a little bit because the foundation has got this like mono focus on F2. It's like, right, we've got to make this thing work, which is completely legitimate, but it kind of makes people working on Ethereum right now. So say if you're a DeFi project, here you go, you've got like 18 or 19 billion dollars worth of economy. You've got all of this great stuff happening with DeFi and Maker and Compound and all of this. And it's like, but it's being done on top of a platform that isn't improving, that isn't being maintained, that's kind of like on like life support, of like, well, it's, it's as soon as F2 works, it's getting a bullet in the head, that's kind of like the kind of the dynamic. But on the ETC side, it's like, no, we're running this forever. It's like, yeah, it's great you're doing F2, but we're doing the original vision. We still believe in Web3, and that's what we're doing.
Actually, coming back to the cooperative, Simon also asked another question in addition to all the other ones. He's saying that ETCCooperative had a member of ENT Eth Alliance. Why is this good for ETC?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I recently announced that we've been approved to join the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Now, the way to understand the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which I kind of helped to set up, I spent a year on that. I was the co-lead architect during the launch period. I spoke at the launch event. I was the vice chair of the technical steering committee. What that was talking about was that at the foundation at that time, you had more and more companies wanting to do things with Ethereum, and it was sort of like, well, that's great, you want to do that, but it isn't really like the mission of the foundation to like help you make money with Ethereum. So it's like, if you guys like want to do that, well, that's great, but that's like not us. So there was this real need for saying, well, businesses that want to do things with the Ethereum protocol, how's that going to work? And the standard kind of answer is, well, look, you form a consortium and all of the companies join it, and then you have working groups, and you all like try and get aligned on your expectations. So specifically, the EEA is a standards body, and it's seeking to define what does enterprise Ethereum standard look like, and really saying, well, if you want to have like an enterprise grade client, what are the standards it should comply to, and really that's going to like have like a like, what do you call it? Not a compliance program, like a badge of approval, right? This is the Ethereum approved. This is an approved client, and what that really is about avoiding vendor lock-in. Is avoiding non-standard little changes where it's like, oh right, you're using parity, but you're using privacy features or whatever, but then you decide, oh, we don't like, this one, and we want to switch over to Quorum or something else, or Bezu, and it's like, oh, but it doesn't work the same way. So really the whole aim of the EEA is to avoid companies making non-compatible Ethereum versions that like tie people in and you can't like get away from. And the aim really of enterprise Ethereum is to be like a superset of public Ethereum, because you have got these additional things that you don't need or want for a public network, but all businesses are going to want this, like some privacy features, alternate consensus. So saying, well, look, we're running these things, across a a set of banks or something right here. All of the banks within this country are going to run like Ethereum nodes, and they're going to have like this private Ethereum net chain that they like run all their transactions on. And you can see, look, the bank transfers between the banks, are all, on a blockchain basically.
Yeah.
But it's not a public blockchain, but it's exactly the same tech. So kind of think of like internets and intranets. It's kind of like that sort of private or consortium chains they exist for exactly the same reason as public chains, which is like trust minimization across a set of like mutually distrustful entities. It's just those aren't the whole world, So it's kind of like a micro macro kind of thing. Is that the same problem is there globally, or across a set of companies, or even within a large company? Like if you've worked for a large multinational like I did at EA, people say, well, oh, you could just run a database because it's all the same company. It's like, you've obviously never worked in that situation, because this office doesn't trust that office. The IT people don't trust the sales
this is a
people
lot
or
of
whatever.
trouble.
These guys they're gonna fuck it up. Don't trust them to the deployment, because if we're all this is just human problems. It's how do you coordinate humans? So really, those enterprise scenarios, it's exactly the same problems as you have on public. It's just that they're at a different scale. So the aim of the EA is really to get to a good standardization for what an enterprise grade Ethereum client looks like. And the thing is that enterprise grade Ethereum client, it would be the same software as you're going to run for your own node as well.
Well, that's true.
Think of it as say browsers. At the start of browsers, it's all like whatever Mosaic and then like Firefox and whatever. And then you get this professionalization coming in of saying, well, look, everyone is running this thing like it's kind of like commodity. You're not going to sell it. Nobody's ever going to pay for this software, but everyone needs it. So look, you're going to have like Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox and Safari, and all of them are going to be open source, but they all have to be compatible. You need web standards. You need that compatibility. So that's really what the EA is seeking to do, is kind of like be that standards body for Ethereum. And yes, the initial kind of need for it is kind of like this private, for businesses, but it's not like evil for businesses. It's just kind of like reflecting the professionalism that you have of saying, so it started out that Geth was made by 4 or 5 guys at the foundation, funded by this the crowd sale, and it's like, that's nice and all, but you kind of like, it needs to be professionals now. Or like for Linux, just starts out as a fun project, but then over time it's like, oh, actually real businesses are building stuff on top of this, and they want to put the effort in. Microsoft and IBM and Oracle and all of that, they're going to dedicate full-time people to doing this collaboratively. Sure. And that's what you're going to see, I think, on Ethereum code bases. And you see this with Hyperledger Besu, is that, so the two of us that were the co-lead architects was myself and Shahan Kashidurian. Now, as I jokingly said, but it's kind of true, at the EA launch event is Shahan's the distributed systems PhD, and I'm the cheerleader. Woo! Not that I'm not like a professional software engineer or anything, but he's like the mega brain. So what happened after that is that I spent a year like trying to pull all these people together, and then the same across Ethereum, and then now the same across Classic. He went back to the lab and spent like 2 years building an amazing team of these like world-class cryptographers, distributed systems experts, Java guys, enterprise guys, who did a from scratch new client in Java that was originally called Pantheon and then got contributed into Hyperledger as Hyperledger Besu.
Yeah.
And what you've got there is like, here's like a professional Ethereum client, right? That was done not as a research project that's like gone live, but as like a serious engineering multi-year effort, driven by consensus, doing all this enterprise engagement for however 3 or 4 years of multiple rounds of like, hey, how can we do a large scale Ethereum deployment to do whatever, like healthcare or energy or this, that, and the other. And that's up to like nation state level. So there's this Dubai 2020 project that was like the goals of that are like just mind-boggling. It'd be interesting to see where they've actually got to, because it nearly is 2020 now. But the goal of that was saying we want all state functions on blockchain by 2020.
Yeah.
Like Dubai wanted everything, like not necessarily on a single chain or the same systems or anything.
No, but generally just put it.
But everything. It's like, right, we want our money, we want healthcare, we want like licensing, we want land registries.
This is something very, very ambitious. Yeah,
it's a massively ambitious project. And I mean, the interesting thing with that is it's kind of like, well, because it's like sort of like an autocratic country as well, it's like, it's going to like get the resourcing it needs. It's like, look, do this or I'm going to chop your head off. So.
Well, yeah, this is kind of like a different attitude there.
It really is. But I mean, what that gives you is the most amazing kind of sandbox of saying, like, if you had like unlimited executive support and kind of unlimited budget, like, can you actually do it? Like, can you make these things work for like a whole country? If you want a scaling issue to tackle, like, there you go.
Yeah, well, definitely, this is something that.
But then what that means is that with that code base, with that Hyperledger V2 code base, like that's kind of like their use cases, is like they want to make something that could run a country. That's kind of like the quality bar that they're aiming at.
Yeah.
But the advantage to ETC of being involved with the EA is that, I mean, you are going to have, main nets, but really what you have with Ethereum is Ethereum is a protocol, is a standard. And the fact that you've got particular chain instances, is kind of like secondary. The fact that you say like this is the main net, like that's just a convention that you've all kind of agreed that that one's the main net. Like there's nothing different about that versus I make one myself with my friend.
Yeah.
It really is completely voluntary, like which is the main net and which isn't. And also, even characteristics like, well, what's the average block time? What's the difficulty thing? Are you even doing Fhash, or is this like a proof of authority one, like Gourley, or is it running some different consensus entirely? Is it running Tendermint, say? Here you could have Ethereum but running Tendermint, or that really what you're going to see as, well, what is Ethereum is an awful lot broader than just the mainnet. So running ETH versus ETC protocols, is just another of those sort of parameters as well.
No.
So what I really think is likely to happen is, if ETC can be as successful as I think it can, of really being a very strong alternative to F1, I don't think it's a given that F2 will like become the thing which is within the EEA. As in the enterprise Ethereum standard as it stands is like an F1 kind of standard. Like, and it's not even necessarily F, in that most of the instances won't be the mainnet. So really what you'll have happening within the EEA is defining, well, what is the Ethereum stack? What does an Ethereum technology stack look like? And the ETH and ETC mainnets are, just one of many versions of that stack. So really, I think what you've got an opportunity is that ETC companies can and should compete for, business enterprise contracts on exactly the same kind of basis. It's not like, oh look, you're the classic people.
Yeah, this is kind of like a clash or like all this stuff.
You're just crazy crypto anarchists and DAO hacker people. And it's like, well, no, the reality is that most of the people that are involved on the ETC side now, are just pragmatic technologists and social dreamers, just the same as on the Ethereum side. It's just that there's a slightly different, well, or some would say very different philosophy in terms of saying, well, where the lines are on, on immutability, backwards compatibility, and really about, interference is that really that you could say that Ethereum is like socially driven. It's about social consensus and, well, what do the community want? Where on the ETC side, you're like, well, really, there's some hard principles here about what a blockchain is and what gives it the value. And if you compromise on those, you've compromised on the whole premise and why even use a blockchain. And I'd put it as sort of like, to me, Ethereum is like democracy, and Ethereum Classic is like a republic. So it's kind of like on the Ethereum side, it's kind of like mob democracy of saying, well, look, if the majority vote for a stupid thing, well, that's fine, it's going to happen. It's like there isn't a constitution, right? Where I think on the ETC side, you're like, look, there's some hard lines in the sand here where these things are like your constitutional rights, right? Which are not going to, you don't really vote to override these, that we really want to say, here is this immutable censorship resistance layer at the bottom where we're really looking to minimize changes because we want this thing to run for decades, because it's it's going to be the foundation of so much stuff. So, you're not going to have some, well, hey, we're paying miners too much, so we're going to like vote down the block size, the block reward from 5 to 3 to 2. Like, that isn't going to happen on ETC because that's economic central planning, and we don't want that. Or similarly, you have a DAO hack situation. Well, no, that we're not going to interfere on ETC. And I mean, to be fair, on the Ethereum side, I don't think that stuff is ever going to happen again anyway. I think you saw with like the funds recovery things with parity, that it's like people may raise them, but I think that they're not probably going to pass. Like, I think you've sort of like discovered your way to the boundary there of saying, like, from their point of view, like the DAO was a one-off, this catastrophic early thing where it was like, okay, we don't like it, but it's probably good to do this, even though we don't feel good about it, but we're not going to do it again. And maybe they've kind of found a way to, like, and there won't be funds recovery.
Yeah.
But I think there are other areas where really that you have just a stronger philosophy, hard conservative sense of ethics or whatever on ETC, which is really saying, well, look, for this ledger layer, this tiny little bit at the bottom of the stack, you don't fuck with it. Like, you just don't. Right, that's the hard line.
So basically, you have already answered the last question that was asked, which is what's going to come for Ethereum Classic in the future, and you kind of like said a lot of things about it.
What I honestly think can happen for Ethereum Classic is that when we fast follow on Istanbul, I believe that we're going to be in a situation where ETC is going to be better than ETH as a deployment target for rational people who are just, not looking at not even caring about that ethical basis, but just purely deciding this is a cheaper way of deploying.
Yeah.
Right? And it's identical. So why would I not do that? Oh, and I can sync nodes. So why would I not do that?
No, this is actually very exciting with all the updates and stuff.
I think you can really have a situation where we can have a large amount of developers and teams deciding, oh yeah, we're going to support ETH as well. And then maybe only, like maybe they slew across and like go, why are we still running, our F nodes? And I think though that that's going to be like a critical mass thing, right? Is that you're going to get a few projects coming across, and then you're going to get more and more. And at a certain point, you've got the network effect. Like I honestly think that you could have this network effect slew of basically the F1 developers kind of go, well, actually, ETC is going to serve our needs better, so we're going to kind of move over um, and really have a situation of sort of like ETH and ETC, like, you know, being like sibling chains, you know, like being equals, like being brothers. You know, here we, you know, when we were young, we fought. And, you know, do you remember when we did that? And you did
this is
that,
that nostalgic, a little
me,
bit of.
and it's like, yeah, but, you know, that was years ago. And now, you know, we're kind of grown up and, you know, and we're brothers, right? And we're going to help each other. And yeah, we're not going to agree on everything, but, you know, most things we're kind of pretty aligned on. And we can certainly, you know, help each other, even if we don't totally agree. And I think that's kind of like, this is where we're going to be over these next few years. And you see this happening already over the last few months. Is
Definitely.
That, you know, more and more cooperation and getting, you know, getting past like, you know, the sort of like the bitterness and just, you know, just like having a go at each other for you know, for past things, really.
Because this is actually, this is something that should happen. I honestly believe that all these projects that are sometimes at kind of not great terms with each other, but really kind of should cooperate. This is an exciting process to see.
And I think it's just like a human thing. Is kind of like there is like a psychological name for it, and I forget. But it's like, you know, the people that are most like you are the ones.
Oh
that
yeah.
Like I guess it's like, say, Catholic and Protestant. Here you go. Like, well, look, you've got like 95 or 97% of the same beliefs. Oh, but you're a heretic, so I'm going to burn you at the stake. You know, it's like.
Well,
really,
hopefully nothing like this happens.
You know, can you not pick better enemies? You know? So I think that's kind of the situation that we've really got with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic is kind of like getting beyond that and realizing, at least for the phase that we're in at the moment, it makes so much more sense for us to collaborate.
Yeah.
And especially actually with Ethereum moving to proof of stake.
Yeah.
Because F1 and ETC, you know, they are very directly competitive. You know, and it is easy to get into this kind of like thought of, oh, ETC like trying to steal all of the developers, they're trying to kill us, or you know, or the other way around, where when you do move to F2, you have got two very kind of complementary and different things. It's like, do you want like the you know, like the security, the POW, or do you want like the scalability? You know, do you want like fast and quick, but maybe less secure? Like maybe POS doesn't give you the same kind of security guarantees. You know, it's kind of like there aren't proven great scale POS systems that people, you know, completely trust. You know, lots and lots of instances of proof of stake systems being, you know, oligarchies, being, you know, like, you know, you look at EOS and all of the whatever bribing the block supply, you know, block providers and all of this. So I think when Ethereum 2 happens, ETC and F2, you know, they can be even better friends because they're kind of not competing for the same market even.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense, I think, for us to really collaborate and also to work together on those sustainability things.
Well, this is already happening, so we can now see it, especially like we haven't got questions about it, so people are very much aware of that. So this is something exciting to see, really, because this is the growing up process. This is very interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I'd really put it in, you know, think of it in those kind of terms, is that ETC, for its first couple of years, you know, it was kind of a bit of a protest kind of movement that wasn't resourced.
Yeah.
You know, not to say that people involved were incapable, you know, that they couldn't do anything. It was just literally there was no money.
Well,
you know,
yeah,
everyone went on the F side. That's where all the money you just got, you know, basically volunteers keeping ETC going, you know, keeping the lights on, but, you know, nothing very much happening beyond, you know, the monetary policy being put in and the difficulty bond being disabled, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So that's changed now. You know, we've basically got funding, and we're going to catch up, and ETC is going to be, you know, of you know, this sibling kind of size. So I mean, I
Yeah.
think what that does in terms of focus and attention is going to be like really interesting, because a lot of people don't see that this is coming. Like they see, oh well, why are we collaborating with ETC? You know what? Like why are we like giving them the you know the attention? Like we should just ignore them. Just ignore all the ETC people. You know they're just enemies. They're just trying to attack Ethereum, and they're just trying to like copy our code, and you know they can't maintain their own things, and you know that you know basically like a mindset that's reflecting the reality 2 or 3 years ago,
Yeah.
but not seeing actually all of that has changed, and we're catching up super fast, and within a few months we're going to be here, like you know we're going to be at the table as peers, you know, so take us seriously,
Yeah, definitely.
you know,
Like
and not, you know,
we
take
certainly do. So
you
this
know,
is
like
something,
take us seriously, not in a threatening kind of way,
but just
or a,
like
you know,
in a
or a
reminder kind
pragmatic
of
kind of
way.
way, but just really saying, well, look, hey, we're here, and also, you know, we're not your enemies either. You know, we're here to help. Like, if there are things on, you know, we've got the same tech stack, we've got the same problems. So look, tell us what are your biggest pain points, because they're going to be our pain points as well.
Yeah,
And
that's
maybe
fair.
we've got the resourcing to fix it. Like you're too busy, but we can go and help and look at it, or we can work together. And we've, you know, that's like a trust relationship that we have to rebuild. Because at the time of the fork, it really was like, you know, fuck you guys, you know, you're all idiots. You know, the foundation is evil. You know,
Yeah, there
you
was
know,
a lot of tension. I remember that. So
you know, you single-handedly, you know, Vitalik is a dictator and dictated that, you know, that to help out his friends, that you know, it's going to get forked and all of this. You know, there's a load of narratives that are just bullshit. You know, they really were never ever true. But you know, they just come from this time of, well, of irreconcilable difference. I mean, that what I'd say about to me about the DAO fork is that you had a number of people really from the Bitcoin world who were more progressive, who founded Ethereum, who were saying, you know, Bitcoin's great, but you know, we want to like try and do smart contract stuff. We want to do more. And you could go, well, oh, attack surface, you know, it's dangerous. It isn't hard money anymore. And it's like, well, yeah, it isn't as hard money, no, because it isn't so much about money. It's about being a platform. Like, it's fine. Like, you know, that's not a conflict either. You can like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like, that's fine. But within that group, you still had a split within the Ethereum group of some people really still kind of having Bitcoin philosophy, and
yeah,
that's really the classic people have still got like that Bitcoin philosophy, or you've got like the more mainstream Ethereum side that are kind of like sort of like social dreamers who really don't care about hard money and don't really care about immutability, or you know they really want the scalable platform. They don't care about like those more conservative um, sort of end. And what you had at the time of the DAO fork was really this sort of like civil war situation of going, right, we've got this hard question of are we going to do anything about this or not? You know, are we going to let this guy, you know, like steal all our money? And we're like so zealoty that we even though we could do something, we're not going to. You know, like do the people matter or is it the tech? And I think, you know, both sides of that are legitimate schools of human thought. You know, some people legitimately think on one side or the other. You know, it's not like, you know, it's just an intrinsic about your character. You
yeah,
know, it's sort of almost like, are you a conservative or a Republican? You know, are you, you know, where do you lie on, you know, should the state provide medical care or not, right?
yeah.
It's
This
not
is
like
like
you're
it's
evil for falling on either side. Like, you know, there's no correct answer to any of these. So I think what you had at the time of the DAO fork was really this recognition that this set of people that have been working together for, you know, a year and a half or 2 years, some of them think very differently. So you'd see this even within the foundation, you know, like people working on the same team going, so you think we should interfere? Fuck, what the fuck? You know, like I thought I knew you. You know, this real situation of people on either side going, and you really think that? Like, I can't believe you think that. on both sides. And there's no, there was no way to resolve it. It's kind of like, sometimes you need to get divorced. You have these differences, and you're just going to fight all the time, and it's not for your benefit. So I think what you have with contentious forks is it's really a human right. It's saying, you have a right to divorce if you've got irreconcilable differences.
Yeah, of
Or on a
course.
country level, you have a right to secede from the union. If the political union is not serving your needs, well, your region or your country has the right to say, look, we're Catalonia and we're leaving Spain, or we're Britain and we're leaving the EU. I mean, that's a bit of a stupid one. But, that is a right that you have, is saying, look, the alternative is saying you're not allowed out, right? You're part of this union and you can't leave. And I mean, that's horrible autocratic, kind of mindset. So I think what you had with Classic was this most beautiful thing, was the first instance of a minority chain surviving and saying, well, look, you don't have, it's not like a black and white thing. It's not a zero-sum game where you have a winner and a loser. It's not like a general election and you lose the election and you just have to put up with the government that you didn't want. You can leave. Both worlds can happen. And obviously, splitting a project in two, that costs you on network effect and maintenance.
Well, certainly, of course.
And you've got less eyeballs and all of that. But sometimes it is the right thing. It's saying, well, look, we can sit and argue forever, or we can both be effective.
And now we can see that you can even work together. Yeah.
Another example of this would be the block. The block size thing on Bitcoin, where because you had this mentality of saying, there has to be complete consensus before any change is made. What you had was, rather than saying, okay, somebody is going to let's try out 2 mega blocks. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a friendly fork of Bitcoin. Right, we're not going to shout at each other. What's going to happen is some group are going to go and try 2 meg blocks, right?
Yeah.
We're going to fork off and we're going to run a network for a bit, and we're going to use science, and we're actually going to measure it
and see what happens.
How does this affect the nodes and decentralization? And maybe 2 megs is fine, but let's actually try it, because what you could have then is going, oh yeah, that experiment worked. Well, brilliant. Okay, well, let's update Bitcoin to 2 meg. The 2 meg fork experiment will probably kind of wither and die because it's kind of served its purpose.
Yeah, but it will actually be useful for the network. Yeah.
We've progressed, we've learned. But instead, you had this kind of anything that isn't us is an attack. This closed mentality of saying, we have reached the end of history. What we have is perfect. The Holy Satoshi has granted us this code, and, you are a heretic if you speak against or try and change any of this. Any innovation is an attack, is crime. Imagine if instead of that you'd had this more, friendly, less tribal situation of saying, well, look, pretty much all of blockchain right now is an experiment.
Well, yeah.
Any legitimate projects that aren't, intentionally scammy, they're all just exploring different kind of trade-offs and options, right? Don't look at these people as enemies. They're your crypto brothers and sisters in arms. If you want an enemy, look at the status quo. Don't look at anyone within blockchain. Because the reason that most people are in blockchain is because they want to make, a better world. They want to make better, better collaboration, better cooperation, better human structures, by having this fair base for peer-to-peer monetary interactions, and more than monetary, with Ethereum, with smart contracts, that we want to build this new fair foundation for everything. And nobody knows what the answers is, and what's the protocols, and what are the answers, and there won't be single answers. It's not like you're going to get one blockchain to rule them all.
No, certainly.
Find the perfect configuration settings here, then you'll have the blockchain for the world, and everything happens on it. I mean, that isn't going to work, obviously.
Yeah, that's very true. So actually, yeah, I think that actually sums up our conversation because we're kind of running out of time here for the live stream, unfortunately. And you said so many amazing things actually of what the cryptocurrency space should be like at some point, because the example of how Ethereum Classic works right now even from the point of humanity and from the point of just like progressing, growing up and developing at the same time, it's fantastic example of
Yeah,
a
yeah,
project that really understands how to do certain things, and that it shouldn't be a battlefield, and that it shouldn't be this kind of like nagging each other and all this stuff, but it should just gradually
yeah.
grow and grow up.
And I mean, I think what I really see in Ethereum Classic is, I mean, for me, I've been involved with Ethereum full time for 4 years, and been interested for five. But I've never considered myself an Ethereum maximalist.
Yeah,
I've always thought that, what happened there with Bitcoin maximalism is like it's the worst thing. It's just such a terrible mindset of saying, look, we are correct. Anything else is bad as an attack, and it's just this closed-minded thing, which is it's just anti-science, it's anti-logic.
yeah,
And so I've always thought that Ethereum maximalism would be like just as bad. Going, well, oh, Polkadot, that's stupid, and don't look at Cosmos or Polkadot or Ion or Cardano or anything. They're all scams. Everything's a scam. They're idiots. It'll never work. Because again, all of these people are exploring the state, and you're way better served by having an open mind and looking at things happening in these and seeing what you can use. So like with Zcash, all the ZK Snark stuff out of Zcash, now finding its way into Ethereum. Great.
yeah,
Or
this
even
is
Ethereum
merging,
2.
this is kind of like teamwork more kind of thing
That's
than
it. It is.
actually
It
like,
is. Look, share what you're working on, and we're not all going to be identical, but we're going to have common problems and common solutions, and find good answers. Or the other one is like, so everything that's happening on Ethereum 2 with the beacon chain, like that's stuff that came out of Definity. Like Definity's forget what it's called, like random beacon or whatever. That's been around for 4 years, and then as they were doing Ethereum 2, it's like, that would be a really good mechanism for for that coordination. So you're going to see this stuff moving all around, or things popping in at layer 2 of kind of like, well, can you do like privacy things on top of Ethereum?
yeah,
Like whatever, like with Aztec or Enigma, or nobody's going to have all of the answers, and what you really want to have is sort of all this interop. Is it is going to be all this rich set of different chains, and chains talking to each other, and some are private, some are public, and like
yeah,
because
definitely.
that's the complexity of the world. You need all of these things. Like nobody has got all the answers. I think what you're going to see is kind of like more and more standardization and stuff happening, where chains become more and more like compatible, so
Yeah,
that really if you're building a DApp, you're not having to go, well, look, I've got to pick my tech stack, pick my chain, and all of the details of how I build my DApp are going to be completely different. Building to different APIs, different languages, like all of that is just horrific. And you look at, say, mobile app development or web development, like nobody's going, well, am I going to be targeting Chrome, or am
well,
I going to
yeah,
be targeting
you're just
Firefox?
like, I'm just
And
doing
if I
it.
if I target Chrome, I'm going to write in JavaScript. If I target Firefox, I'm going to write my web pages in C++. Like, no, you have layers of abstraction, and I
Yeah,
think that's what you're going to have on blockchain as well. Is like certainly the particular network that you target to. Am I going Ethereum or Ethereum Classic? Is certainly like that concern is going to be way gone. But even beyond that, well, am I building on top of Polkadot or Ethereum? I don't know. I don't care really. I'm actually building on top of some middleware. you know,
Yeah.
some framework that's the DAP framework or whatever. And I think that's where you're going to get to is it's the same kind of progression that you had with programming. Of say, like in the 1980s, it's like, right, I'm going to make a program for a Commodore 64 or for a PC,
Yeah.
and they're, you know, completely different. It's like, you know, you're writing in like machine code, and then it's like, okay, then you're writing in BASIC or C, and then it's like, you know, you go up and up and up, where it's like, yeah, I'm writing a C program, and that C program could run on like any computer. Or then it's like, oh, C's too low level. Can I do Java? Okay, yeah, you've got Java.
Just
like
leveling
Java,
up kind of thing.
and it goes up and up and up. And that's exactly what we're going to have on blockchain. I think is it's I've called it the path to boring. Like if you can make blockchain as boring as databases, like that's success.
Oh,
So
this is
like,
a great
you know,
forecast.
running on MySQL or like you know, or Oracle or whatever. It's like I can't even remember. Like there's just some database thing that we write to an API. You know, that's what it will be. Is kind of like, you know, you want to get to the point where saying, well, you know, oh, what do you do? I'm a blockchain developer. Well, how very boring. You know, like that would be as interesting as saying, yeah, I work with databases.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
great, you know, I guess like they make the world go round, but who cares?
Well,
You know,
we definitely
stuff to
will
be-
see how it's gonna look like. Oh, like, okay, unfortunately, we're officially out of time.
Okay.
It was amazing having you, and I think probably we should just repeat it and do it all over again with normal start of the live stream, because this ate up a little bit of time for us. And actually, I really, really love the idea of blockchain development being boring. This is something that I will think about today for sure.
Excellent.
And
Because what that means is it's kind of solved.
yeah,
Right? It's got a solved problem.
that's
Whereas,
it.
you know, you've got
This
known
is
best practices, and you know, it's like it's not cutting edge anymore
yeah,
because
definitely.
it's just ubiquitous. You know, it's just well, you know, you wouldn't get a blockchain specialist because it's just like a common skill. It's like, oh, do you know blockchain? Oh, yeah, I know a bit. You know, in the same way as maybe you'd know, you know, yeah, I've done a bit of web stuff. I've done a bit of DB. I've done a bit of blockchain. You know, it's just, yeah, of course you do.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So for everybody here with us on the live stream, I'm reminding that I've been here with Bob Summerwill from Ethereum Classic Cooperative, and you should definitely just subscribe to his social networks and drop him messages in case there's something else that you would like to ask. And probably stay tuned to whenever we do something like this again, because it's fantastic having Bob around talking about Ethereum Classic and about blockchain space in general. I think it was really, really lovely. Thank you so much, Bob.
Okay, it was yeah, it was good fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just Bob Summerwill, so BOB, and then summer like the season, WILL. You know, and on Twitter, bobsummerwill.com. If you just search Bob Summerwill anywhere, I'm like the only one in the world.
Okay, I'll just stop streaming and also come back to you for a moment. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. It was Maria Carolla from Guarda Wallet and Bob from Ethereum Classic Cooperative. It's a pleasure, and stay tuned to more stuff. Subscribe to Guarda's accounts too to know what's going on around.